Good evening. So, Tuesday, April 7th, 1 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to do this video to stay aligned with this channel's personal intent and also giving something back from my perspective, day-to-day thoughts that I have. And today's been pretty heavy. Not so much from morning to 5 or 6, but once I got home, I listened to Donald Trump's propaganda around the idea that Iranians get sad when the United States stops bombing, and somehow bombing universities and energy infrastructure is liberating a people. It's the recipe that keeps getting launched from the colonizer mindset of the patriarchy is stupefying in a way. Like this redundancy. Every accusation is a self-confession. They speak about the citizens in Iran that were allegedly shot in cold blood, which I don't know enough about that to really speak on it, so that's why I use the word allegedly, at least in the sense of the numbers that they're talking about, 35,000 to 40,000. I need to do a separate video on that. And ultimately, the gist of it is that using that as a justification for killing more tens of thousands of people to liberate, it makes no sense whatsoever, because you've got people are connected by positive cultural identity, and in some instances, especially with the far right, negative cultural identity. And of course, within those ranks, there's divisions. So the ego always finds a way to make someone else the target other than itself. That would be counterintuitive. So I feel like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there feeling powerless and anxious, enraged, confused, sad, depressed. And I want to reach out with this video and just give a few suggestions, and that is that use that rage and depression to educate yourself, to understand, and build your moral footing, and ultimately the government, the patriarchy, the top 1%, things like Epstein Island, even Wall Street and Ponzi scams, Bernie Madoff, and the Gaza genocide, what France did to Haiti, what the United States is currently doing to Cuba. Not that it's a current event, and it's been going on for decades. These expressions of a demented version of the masculine, this has been going on for a long time. There's a legacy of disease in the collective patriarchy. And I don't see that happening any differently going into the future until individuals begin to change themselves. It's a reflection of, it's kind of like a pyramid in a way. What the base is points upwards to the top. And I'm not saying that everyone is consciously choosing sociopaths and war criminals who never get convicted. And if they are brought in by the Hague, will be invaded by the United States based on the Hague Invasion Act and rescued from conviction. This corruption takes advantage of a distracted populace, and in many ways a powerless populace, while they're distracted. And eventually people will need to integrate politics into their everyday life if they want change. Even if it's just simply researching something that bothers you, or some claim that someone has made on Fox News or CNN or New York Times. This habit of becoming your own journalist from time to time, it needs form, and it needs to come from tradition. So there are guidelines, and there's a whole journalistic, it's like a poster. You can actually get it and have it. I don't have one yet, but I know it exists as a kind of guidelines of journalism. And when you go about this process, it will inevitably change other things in your life. I mean, it's politics are it's human and also inhuman. And once you start applying yourself and learning more, this is going to radiate out into the rest of your life as well. There's no way, because the psyche has no borders. So whatever you do with your mind will permeate everything in your life. And I feel like there's a threshold of saturation, of distraction, that eventually it will break and become redundant. That there is a ceiling, and it could very well be that we're reaching that ceiling. I mean, artificial intelligence is kind of it has a subconscious message in the phraseology. And you can look at it practically and assume that it's not a personal offense, but ultimately it is. I mean, imagine that the collective consciousness on the planet has seemingly, at least in the technological side of things and measuring progress, has created artificial intelligence. And of course, that's just an ingredient, not necessarily a result. I mean, maybe it's both, but it begs a pause and to look at how that was brought about and why the need. Have people, not as a monolith, but enough people will they become dependent on an external source like that and believe it without any internal critic or debate? And what does that mean? What does that imply? It's almost like a new religion in a way. People speaking to AI companions and creating their own sort of alter ego, like advanced forms of self-indulgence, and yet, to me, it's all ritual. I mean, it's not to be judged as a final product. It's a catalyst for something, and we have no clue what that will look like in 10 years or 20 or 100 or 1,000 for that matter. So discernment comes in, and I think it's just important for people to make sure they're not sacrificing their own autonomy and sense of self, that you don't become dependent or codependent on something like that. Electricity is, we take it for granted, and it is an external thing. I mean, the whole superstructure is transient, and only as permanent as a constant lightning strike. So that weather can change, and then where are you? So just remain flexible. Trust in AI, but tie your camel. Have a plan. Well, let AI be your plan B, and be your own plan A. Back to Trump and Iran, and the people there, and the propaganda. The same propaganda was being spread with the Taliban in Afghanistan, and look what happened there. An utter failure of U.S. foreign policy and tax dollars. The Taliban simply came back in 20 years later and reclaimed everything, and got a lot of free gifts from the American taxpayers in the form of military weaponry and transports and buildings and all sorts of stuff. And let me let you in on a few things around American soft colonialism. There are American military bases peppered all throughout the Middle East, at least before Iran leveled them down to about 6 inches tall. This whole liberation thing is a front. It hinges on the ancestral propaganda of Christian divine providence, the religious justification and persecution and judgment of the indigenous of Turtle Island. Millions upon millions upon millions of indigenous were genocided based on this idea of a religious right to conquer the savages, or save them from themselves. And this is a high functioning level of psychopathy. I mean, it's a phenomenon in the human world that I can't really explain it tonight. I'm hanging on to sort of get all the talking points I want, but it's accessible, it's believable by a mass group of people if the conditions are right. And even if they don't feel that it's justified, somehow, some way, they compartmentalize and pick and choose their level of participation, and yet still participate. So they may not be holding the gun, but they're making the bullets. They may not be making the bullets, but they're making the cardboard that the bullets go into, that become the boxes that are stacked on shelves. And there's like a contractual agreement, nonetheless, that everyone's doing their part, and those who are doing less actual physical contact with the the genocide meat grinder, they will justify their part in saying, well, that's over there, they're doing that. That's not me. And yet it is, because you're there. It's kind of like people who are pro-Palestinian working against the Israeli government in Israel, living there, contributing. So we all cope in different ways, and I guess to each their own, if that's how you can live. I guess you are where you are, and sometimes people are materialistically trapped in a way, even if they have like an aha moment, and they feel like they're no longer a part of what they were once, vehemently justifying and defending. In many real world cases, they can't go anywhere except for inside their daily thoughts and feelings, and they don't have the resources or the connections to uproot and move to another continent or another region. And that's fair. I mean, it's not every conundrum is something you can solve. You just have to maintain it and do your best. So the colonizer mindset of the U.S. State Department, the CIA, the Middle East has been a conquest since Napoleon invaded Egypt, and Britain began its dubious actions after World War One, and World War Two, although maybe I'll retract the World War One part. I think I meant World War Two. But with the British, I'm pretty sure they were there doing something genocidal in the previous era as well, because they started super early with colonizing and genociding, enslaving, shipping human beings around the world. This demonic habit of saving people from themselves seems to have come from a lot of it. It seems to have come from Britain, from the Anglo-Saxon side of things. I may dig into that someday, try and figure out where this portal to Hades opened up and started to take applicants. The United States is not saving the Iranian people and creating a democracy. The United States has never created a democracy in the Middle East. All the regime changes, they've all been either dictators or monarchs who are also dictators. There are no democracies in the Middle East that have been created by the Republic of the United States. And the United States is not a democracy either, by the way. The founding fathers, if you can call them fathers, voted against that, that they didn't want democracy, they wanted a republic. And so nowadays, and even before, um, the politics in many ways is kind of a schizophrenic presentation of a fact that they don't want you to know about. But people are starting to get privy to it. It's starting to come out a little bit more. Is that they both work for the same company, capitalists, and the military-industrial complex, and this demented uh, sense of authority and privilege and um, a strange pathology of not minding one's own business, being addicted to being a busybody and minding other people's business, mind capturing, and trying to manipulate and um, control and take what they want. And it's a I don't really, I don't have words tonight for it, but I just wanted to put it out there that the propaganda that Trump is selling is truly that. It, it's all about conquest and control and oil and money and more conquest and control and oil and money. If, you know, Iran, it's going to be a really tough situation. Look into why Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine was possibly about to join NATO, and Russia knows that NATO is just a front for the United States and imperial powers and colonizer mindset and nuclear arsenal silos. And Turkey or Turkey is part of NATO, and they have nuclear assets on their land and complements of NATO under the auspices of NATO. And so NATO is simply another colonizer utility and control mechanism, leverage, and also a kind of deterrent. And the same for Israel. It's a nuclear deterrent and an arm of American imperialism. But the weird thing about Israel is it's a third arm. It's not the left or the right. It's its own arm growing out of the back of America. And it has a lot of things that can pick up when America's not looking. A knife, a videotape. Mossad is deep into espionage and blackmail and assassinations and all sorts of things. It's like a, well, it's not like, it is the mafia. It's a Zionist mafia. And of course, the CIA is the Christian Zionist mafia. So, and the MI6 is England's mafia. So you have these unhinged, unchecked, unlimited budget terrorist organizations who are deeply involved in manipulating and destroying the lives of tens of thousands, millions of people in order to achieve capitalistic goals. There are no morals, principles, ethics, virtues, dignity, compassion, generosity. None of that is part of their goals or aims. Wouldn't it be interesting if we someday lived in a world that required every member of the House of Representatives, every governor, every congressman, every senator, every local mayor of every city in the United States, every state, well, I already went into the representatives, but basically all the administrators, top administrators of every state, county, not just the governor, because that wouldn't be enough. We would have to get, it would have to be every county as well. And they are required to travel to the Middle East, to Africa, and there would be like an exchange situation where, well, maybe not totally exchange, but some exchange, like an exchange student situation that would last for, say, a month. And they would be required to go and look at the effects of the American machine, the colonizer machine. Meet the people, look at the wreckage, talk to the elders, visit the cemeteries, visit the amputees of Gaza. Every single one would be mandated to do this, and it would be enforceable. Of course, it would be paid by the American taxpayer, but the aim of it would be full disclosure and also educating the conscience. People don't really need, I mean, you hear a lot about people becoming conscious or waking up. I don't see that as being relative here. I mean, until you develop a moral footing, a conscience, and a sense of yourself uninhibited by parts of yourself that tend to blame others or get triggered and turn it into some sort of dance of self-distraction. Consciousness is the least of your worries. And it's not like when people get an epiphany or they wake up, they gain automatic wisdom and deep sense of dignity, pride, virtue, ethics, principles of moral behavior and moral reckoning or deliberation. This stuff is not for free. And visiting those areas would change people's lives, would change the American government. There would be a revolution. The last thing the American government wants members, especially local government, to do is visit Afghanistan or Iran or China, um, and start talking to people and start seeing the results, what's actually happening, what's actually to feel it, to walk in the shoes of the victims of the U.S. State Department's um, colonizing pathology that it's had since uh, the late 1600s. So, at least in this geographical location. Um, so, since we're isolated, Canada on top, South America on the bottom, ocean on both sides, it's very easy for the American government to propagandize its populace quite successfully. But the internet is changing that. Independent journalism is changing that. And I hope to contribute. Um, it's, but I'm approaching it a little bit differently in the sense that I feel like not enough people talk about the causes, and they get caught up in the effects and the classism wars, the political wars, the wars between, well, what effect is more appropriate for my reaction versus, well, maybe my life would be better without reactions at all around this stuff. Like, what's the causes of this stuff? Maybe I want to save my energy and my reactions for my personal life. Um, so it's something that really irks me, like this whole nonsensical uh, thing that Trump's on about. He's he's really revealing the true underbelly of privilege and um, the arrogance that's needed when you're not educated about the things that you assume you are. There's always a compensationary thing that occurs when you're presenting yourself to somebody. If you're not educated, you act as if you are, which then is arrogance, and um, and you dismiss others because you know they can prove you wrong. And Trump is dismissing left and right, including generals and people who are wanting to speak with him during news conferences. So as soon as someone asks him an honest question, he asks them, well, where are you from? And they tell them, and he's, oh, well, that's a bunch of crazies. Which this dismissiveness is just simply a deflection of his own sense of self. He knows that he doesn't know, and he doesn't want to know. He is pure emotion, and there's no governing factor. He has no governing factor. And what I mean by that is no there's a lack of self-esteem, self-respect. He is a victim. He is a professional victim, and you can see through his lifestyle and the things that have happened in his life that he is lashing out continuously. And he sabotages himself to maintain this identity of the victim. So there's more to say around that. Americans' heritage, ancestry around the mindset of early settlers, and how that was all ripe for certain indoctrinations and justifications to come in and scoop that up and paint whatever picture they wanted. Humans do weird things when they're up against the wall and they can't get back on the ship and go back to where they came from or where they were exiled from. Not that that's an excuse to do genocide, but it's a ruthless world, and not every situation has a moral choice. But enough of them do that we could make a difference if the people, when that saturation point is met, I don't know what it would look like. Something unusual, I feel, would need to occur to break the routine. New models of the routine come out yearly, sometimes twice a year, and time will tell. So and rather than say time will tell, because that's kind of like an off ramp, which I guess I'm kind of starting to fade a little bit. So I'm not sincerely looking for off ramps, but I'm winding down here this evening, so some phrases are slipping off. So rather than time will tell, I'd like to just focus on reiterating, be a student of your feelings and your curiosities and your complaints and your anxiety and your depression. Look into things that you can do for yourself and for others. Express your true feelings and your true opinions about things. Don't hold back. If you lose some friends, so be it. That means that you gain more of yourself. You refine what you either already know, or oftentimes we lose people in order so that they can see themselves better. Maybe the relationship is co-enabling something that doesn't serve either, and until one person is put in a position to be so true to themselves that they have to admit a boundary or a new boundary or an old one that they haven't spoken about for years and years. People change, and those changes, along with those changes, sacrifices have to be made. It's just a fact of life, and so don't be critical of the U.S. State Department think tank propaganda of anything they say, and research the history, research the monarchs of the Middle East. Again, there are no democracies in the Middle East, and the American government does not want democracy. It wants the closest thing to a republic that's controlled by capitalism, and that is dictators and monarchs. Fascism is a capitalist's dream come true. Democracies question, they arrest people, they the people have the power. And when the people have the power, conscience, morals, laws, binding officials to a certain level of behavior, that makes that makes the dysfunction nervous and agitated, because it wants to be comfortable and in control, because that's its coping mechanism. Because in behind the scenes, it's a raging psychopath, and so a psychopath does not want self-reflection. It needs a target. It needs to blame something. It needs a victim. So it's no coincidence that those military bases in every country that is either a part of NATO or has a military base of the United States in it, those military bases are not just for protection against Iran or Russia invading someday. It's protection against civilians. It's a culling device, just in case. So just keep that in mind. It's just like the United States military on U.S. soil. They've been used to cull the masses as well. So be very doubt everything that comes out of Washington, D.C., or the G7 for that matter. Everything has two faces, sometimes four, one on the inside, one on the outside. So I'm going to end this evening. I wrote a piece around tenacity, and there are human qualities of human nature that military planners apparently have yet to be able to manipulate and predict. The Taliban demonstrated this, not that that's necessarily a good thing, But tenacity is something that's in the human, I guess you could call it spirit. Can't explain it tonight exactly how that works, but the mind, belief, glandular responses to those things, testosterone, cortisone, people can, they get excited, they get determined even. These are like psyche elementals that get conjured up in moments of a sense of injustice or a need for vengeance or to settle a score or someone being determined to not be under the yoke of a lesser moral cabal or government, or to be taken advantage of or manipulated and compromised in some way that's going to make them feel less than free, or perhaps compromised in a different way that they are not, their lifestyle is their lifestyle routine is not able to morph in another direction than the one that they've known for decades. And America just simply needs to grow up and learn how to mind its own business. The Iranian government is no business of Anglo-Saxons. It's the business of the Persians. And if the Persians ask for help, okay, then they make it someone's business. But other than that, I mean, you don't see the Canadians marching on the Deep South to get rid of systemic racism. Not that it's only in the Deep South. Just saying that the statistically, there's areas where it's definitely more abundant than others, and you don't see Japan launching. Not that they have their own navy, but ships from Japan filled with Japanese soldiers, manned by the United States, or let's say you don't see ships being forcefully commandeered by Japanese and coming to save Cuba. So there is no moral high ground in any conquest that the America does in the Middle East. So keep that in mind, that this virtue signaling or religiousness is a complete farce. It's only there to trigger people into oh, well, that's what that's about. Oh, well, good. They're doing something good. Well, they're not, and it never is good. There's nothing good that's ever come from American foreign policy in the Middle East, including Israel. It's Hannibal Lecter and Freddy Krueger having a sit down. I mean, that's nothing. Nothing good's going to come from that, and If you just look at the ingredients and the results, all the preemptive attacks that Israel has carried out on their neighbors just because they could, and because they get it in their head that someone said something and there's a boogeyman in the bushes, so we got to mow down, we got to level the mountain because there's a, I heard something, kind of like the Acorn police video where the guy, a squirrel drops an acorn on the hood of a car, and this policeman completely freaks out and starts shooting into the car and thought it was a gunshot. And the level of paranoia, that's trauma, and that's something that is indicative of what was imported from Europe. So the ruling class in Israel brought with them a lot of things that are not indigenous to that region. I mean, in the sense of those traumas were created by European anti-Semitism, not Middle Eastern anti-Semitism. So I'm going to read this that I wrote, and then I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for hanging in there with me. So, something you'll never hear from mainstream media is that you cannot pretend tenacity. Something the ruling class of Israel simply cannot have. Time itself creates this in its peoples, wherever they may be. There's all sorts of timelines a geographical collection of cultures hold, and within that timeline, there's vibes you cannot imagine yourself into. You feel the connection intuitively, it prompts you. You do not knock on its door. Americans going into Iran, European Jews migrating to Palestine. These migrations can only present a pretense, a dull mask of belonging or right to administrate, to be there. Resistance is what dignity has to do to feel aligned with its own sense of self, no matter the complex details propaganda tries on so to confuse the spectators of news with. Their disconnectedness in Israel and the USA is already factored in, that being the disconnectedness of the spectators of the news, mainstream media news. This is already factored in. The psychology of propaganda understands herd mindset. After all, it is this collective mindset that rides with tenacity and fuels superiority complexes hubris. So that same tenacity, or at least energy around things, can move both sides. One being deeply cultural and full of dignity, and the other one being reactionary and radical and willful, belligerent. I think the word tenacity starts to lose some of its density when it starts to go over to the dark side. You can still call it tenaciousness, but it's loose. It's like barely. it's barely holding on to the idea of tenaciousness. Normally, at least in my mind, tenaciousness is a positive force. It's like a willfulness to not lose, or a willfulness to solve a problem, to be what you know is true. And when you're, and that's based on a good moral foundation, ethical boundaries, a kind of deliberation of one's character, versus someone who is simply following orders, or in a mass hysteria situation where they're having an emotional catharsis over an issue that has nothing, the issue they're having an emotional catharsis over is not the root of why they need to have an emotional catharsis. It's just an excuse for them to let off some steam because they have deeper issues that need that catharsis to reinforce itself and blame someone else and remain the victim. So there's that. Some, in the sense of far right tenacity, it's being used very loosely here. The tenacity, so I'll repeat some of this. After all, it is this collective mindset that rides with tenacity and fuels superiority complexes hubris. It is an undercurrent of sorts that cannot be manufactured artificially by the human mind or imagination. It's a thing of nature, a thing of time grinding the kernels of propaganda. Well, here we are, me looking at one word and saying another. So what I'm saying here is that tenacity cannot be manufactured. So I'll go back and reread this a little bit. It is an undercurrent of sorts that cannot be manufactured artificially by the human mind or imagination. It's a thing of nature, a thing of time, grinding the kernels of propagation, endurance, lessons learned, and deeds done. One of the reasons the fascist Zionist regimes of Israel and the evangelical branches of the USA use the Bible to back them up is that they lack earned tenacity, earned dignity. They must wear thick layers of makeup to make their own arguments. There are no real self-evident truths behind their faiths, actions, or fixations. The realness comes from that time thing again. America is very young as a cultural experiment. Israel, even younger. Kids in the playground of forces far older than its playing dress-up can truly outlast. So, what I'm getting at here is, and I'll maybe get into this a little more later, when I say there's no real self-evident truths behind their faiths, actions, or fixations, what I mean by this is not that people don't have their own private relationship to their faith. But when they make policy decisions, when they do things that affect other people's lives, and they use Holy Scripture to justify that, and they lose all moral compass directions and the compass itself, they throw in the waste can virtues and everything, all the ethical and principled foundation stones of the very religion that they claim to be worshiping. This is what I mean, that the hypocrisy is nuclear. I mean, it's mind-boggling how demonstratively hypocritical religion can be in times of when the pedal really hits the metal. It has nothing, because it justifies genocide, it justifies invading a sovereign country and bombing its people, knocking out electricity, bombing hospitals. I mean, when there's no backlash from people who supposedly are Jewish, let's say, in the idea of Gaza. In the early days, Netanyahu was saying it was a battle against the children of light and the children of darkness. I mean, this is demonic rhetoric. This is not heavenly rhetoric. This is not. This is just. Yeah, this is not religion. I mean, so ultimately, that's what I'm getting at. Those individuals have no self-evident truths behind their faiths, actions, or fixations because of the deeds that they've done. So don't think that I'm speaking about all people who claim a Judaic faith or a Muslim faith or a Christian faith. I feel like these modes of approaching life and daily trials and tribulations, to each his own. And there's no judgment there. So tenacity always wins. It is pure will, deep, mature pride of purpose, and a knowing of what is true and what is false. It is relentless, patient, clever, and morphs into many more circumstances than that of the human race's presentations of it. One of its main purposes is the recycling of the human ego's masks. It eats them like potato chips or popcorn during a very long movie. It turns things inside out in order to show the thing within what it has been missing, all the while assuming it's seen it all. So what I'm getting at here is the tenacity of nature and evolution. And one might even go down to the genetic codes and inherited sensibilities or characteristics. So there is a deep project going on here, and tenacity is part of that. There's like curiosity is tenacious. Want is tenacious. And of course, it has a shadow side. I mean, the energy behind it, the again, like I said, the that I mean, I wouldn't call it necessarily a Siamese twin, but tenaciousness, again, it loses its virtue and a certain glow, let's say, when it becomes, um, when it's serving a lesser cause. And yet, maybe it's neutral in a sense that um, yeah, I mean that's one way of looking at it. It's a neutral focal point, or a way of focusing on something, and like a dog with a bone. You, um, tenacity can serve dark lords as well. But I think you get the sense of what I'm saying here is that tenaciousness um, is a force, and my focus here a little bit was around Iran and its 4 or 5 thousand-year-old culture, and that they are tenacious, and Americans and Israelis cannot be that kind of tenacious. They're too young. They have no, they really don't have anything to lose, so to speak. Um, it's a different kind of loss. It's more an illusory loss, a loss of um, a project. But Persia, the loss there is it's on a different scale. It's deeper. It's it's totally something else. And the tenaciousness of an indigenous people versus a ruling class that had migrated from Europe and colonizer mindsets from the United States, who are also of European heritage and indoctrination, um, they cannot tap into that tenaciousness of that region. They are not of the same cloth, let's say, when it comes to the human spirit, like connecting with the land, connecting with um, sentimentality, uh, valuing certain things, religious artifacts and buildings and monuments and poetry and music and uh, the food and the lineages of how things evolved over thousands and thousands of years. I mean, the Iranians have been propagating roses, for an example, for over 1,000 years. So, I mean, come on. We're talking about that's almost 5 times older than, or 4 times older than America. It's like 4 Americas could happen, and it's still, you know, is barely. It's like 1/4 of the age of. I mean, after 4 times, it would only be 1/4 the age of that region. So there's a disconnect there. Um, uh, yeah, and what that implies, at least in the sense of military engagement, is eventual defeat. I mean, you may win a battle, you may hang out for a decade or two, but you will not endure because you don't have the intuitive fortification to do so. You have no real inner need or instinct or priority to do so. Your emotions are not indigenous to that land, and you're a visitor, you're a tourist, and unless you have an epiphany and you suddenly feel something different, but then if you do, you're not going to want to carpet bomb the mountain range that you suddenly realize that maybe you've seen it before or you know it. You want to live there. You want to get to know the people. Normally, when you have a deja vu or an epiphany like that, you don't go on a murderous rampage and destroy it. You want to make a connection with it. So, the last part here, why does most of the world support Iran in their defense against this illegal war? Because they feel something. They cannot exactly put into words, but it is there, and it feels right. This is that hand that does not knock. It knows no doors. It simply walks in. So, that's it for tonight. Thank you again for enduring. Reading this piece was a little bumpy because I'm super tired, and I appreciate you considering that and hanging in there with me once again. Take care, and good luck in whatever good things you're doing out there. Good night.